And hello, everybody. It's the Gruppeteer, and welcome back to another episode of Cartoons vs. Cancer, the show where I interview all kinds of cool cartoon creators to help raise money for a very good friend of mine with cancer named Madeline. And today's guest is a very special one. He's the creator of the Nickelodeon show Rocko's Modern Life, the Cartoon Network show Camp Lazlo, and the upcoming PBS Kids show Luna Around the World. He's also the author of Creating Animated Cartoons with Character, and is the kinds of cool environmental awards that I can't remember off the top of my head. Mr. Joe Murray is our guest today. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
And
nice to be here.
And as Joe can't be in the studio today, we have trapped his soul, his mind, his body inside of Gordon the Foot right here. So, you know, we'll be talking to Joe, but we'll be talking right to Gordon the Foot right here in the studio. And I think the only way to start out is when I was introducing you, it's so hard not to say Rocko's Modern Life not in a Fred Schneider voice. How did you get the B-52s to do the theme song for you?
Well, Pat Irwin was he came on to do the composing for the actual series, and he's in the B-52s, and so it kind of worked out. Actually, you know, back when I first started doing the pilot, I went into a store with, actually, it was a DVD store, which you don't see anymore, but and I went through all these DVDs of bands that I thought would be great for Rocko, and I arrived at the B-52s, surprisingly enough, but it just so happened that through connections I got Pat Irwin to do the composing, and I said, can you bring Fred in and Kate, and we could do this theme song. It would be really great, and it was a fun day. We did it in Greenwich Village in New York, and it was good.
Are the B-52s cool guys? They seem pretty chill.
Fred is really eccentric.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? What, do you have any adventures with him?
I hope it's okay if I tell this story, but
yes, it is.
Well, he at the time when we recorded the theme song, Fred was kind of going through something on his own where he wanted to be taken seriously as a proper singer, and he started singing his part like seriously, and
so wait, no, so he started saying Rocko's Modern Life seriously?
Can you cut it for a minute? I would really like, can Fred just be Fred?
Yeah.
And the producer says, Fred doesn't want to be Fred anymore. And I said, well, maybe Fred can be Fred today, and then maybe tomorrow. He doesn't have to be Fred anymore, but it would be nice. No, he's a really nice guy. No, and he understood. I just, I wanted his iconic voice that made famous in those B-52 songs, which I love so much. So it was a real honor. And Kate and I hit it off really well. It was about the time of the O.J. Simpson trial, so we just sat there and talked about the trial. It was kind of funny. Yeah. So I guess Fred comes in and he goes to the booth and he leans into the mic all serious and he's like, Rocko's Modern Life. Is that how it played out? No, he starts singing it.
Rocko's
Modern Life.
This is great. He sounds like, I've seen interviews with him. He seems like a great guy.
He's a great guy. No, he's a great guy. And Pat Irwin is like a musical genius who did the composing. He was, we did it all with live instruments, and it was a really tight deadline, and he pulled it off every week to do it. So it was pretty amazing.
So a little lesson, or I guess a little animation history for you kids at home. When Nickelodeon first started out, the three first cartoons were Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, and Doug. Rugrats was that Klasky Supo, Ren and Stimpy was at Spumco. I don't know where Doug was. But when they made Rocko, it was the first cartoon that was made in the I don't know if it was Burbank at the time, but it was made in the Nickelodeon Animation Studio, right?
No,
it wasn't. What? Get the Wikipedia page.
Well, if it says that on Wikipedia, Wikipedia is wrong. Which there's a few things wrong, but no, funny enough, actually, I was just over there at the Motion Picture Union building in Studio City on Ventura. We were in the ground floor, and that was our first offices. And funny enough that we were in the Union building and we weren't Union, and which I found very odd. But yeah, no, it was our own building. It was our floor. My studio kind of merged with what was called Games Animation back then. It was just kind of an arm of Nickelodeon, and then we moved from there to a building on Vineland in Studio City, and we had some offices there, and we never were in the Nickelodeon building in Burbank.
Well,
so I'm kind of glad.
Now I just feel peachy.
Well, no.
But I read, so maybe it wasn't in the Nick studio, but I read maybe it was in the Game Maker studio. I read once that someone during the production in the studio, whatever studio that may be, of Rocko's Modern Life, supposedly someone once brought an unloaded gun into the production. Is this true, or is this just hocus pocus from the internet?
No, that's very true.
Really?
Well, it was really a strange environment. You know, we were all really strange, yeah. and I kind of ran the production. That I tried to keep it as loose as possible, and so there was lots of really weird things going on all the time. And one time a reporter came in and she kind of described it as a nursery school without supervision, and except I was supposed to be the supervision. So, but yes, one of our directors. It was funny because we used to sometimes the head honchos would come in from New York. I don't know who they were. They're from MTV Networks, and one time one of the guys said, "Could you give this guy a tour of your studio?" And so I did, and it was the VP of Nickelodeon and this guy from MTV Networks, and I started going through the offices, and then we went into one office, and the director stood up, and he had a holster, and he had a gun, and I didn't really notice it too much, and the guy walked out. He was looking a little white, and he said, "Director in there had a gun."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, you know, you have to defend yourself around here. It gets a little crazy." So really just kind of slough it off. And but it was
yeah,
true story. And that one is true.
It looks like in the comments.
Is that on Wikipedia?
That was, where did I see that? I think I saw that on Mental Floss, but it just said that someone supposedly brought in an unloaded gun once, so you can put that on as fact now.
So he brought it in to show his partner, the storyboard guy. I guess it was an old Western guy. And he had just put it on. It was just timing that we walked in at that point in time. Yeah. But it looked like that's the way he came to work every day, which he's known to do stuff like that a lot.
So in the comments, the little Justin is asking about your new show on PBS, or your soon-to-be show on Sorry about that. Your soon-to-be show on PBS Kids, Luna Around the World. Could you tell us a little bit about Luna Around the World, or at least what you're allowed to? I don't know how PBS Kids is with their properties.
Yeah, so Lena Szyminski, who I worked with on Rocko and Lazlo, moved over to PBS Kids, and she's been asking me, for if I had any ideas for a PBS show, and I thought it was a little different of an age group for me to be addressing. But I also thought, so now I have a newborn baby, and I have a 3-year-old toddler, and I'm kind of living in that kids world, and so we started talking. I had some ideas about something that started that would get kids interested in knowing about the rest of the world and the other kids around the world and the different cultures and the different. We don't get into religion, but we definitely get into the different ways that everybody does something in the world, and And Loon of the Moon comes down and hangs out with them wherever they are. They work. The kids are parents live in work in a circus, and the circus travels around the world. It's like Cirque du Soleil, and it's a lot of fun. It's gonna be great. We're putting all the pieces together to get the production going. So it's supposed to debut in 2018, I think early 2018.
Oh,
yeah. So it's about diversity, which I really feel like kids need to get a handle on, and especially in this climate of
that's a really
acceptance.
That's a really bold idea too.
Not building a wall, but actually seeing the others that are around us that live on this planet with us, and that we're all one. If I don't get too philosophical.
Yeah, no, that's pretty bold. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So with you said you had a 3-year-old son and a newborn too?
Yes.
Is they are they? Well, I guess is your 3-year-old son old enough to introduce to Lazlo or Rocko yet, or does he know that his dad made these kind of shows, or does he watch them at least?
He loves Lazlo and Rocko. I've got a little toy cabinet that has all the merchandise from the shows, and so he knows all the characters really well because he keeps breaking into it and pulling stuff out.
Yeah.
Spunky goes flying across the room all the time, and so he knows the characters. He's watched some episodes. He's definitely a cartoon kind of kid.
That's the best kind.
We try and limit it, but yeah, I don't know if he really gets the idea that I did it, but he does have me, like, whenever he pulls out his paper and he's drawing, he has me draw all the characters. So I think he does kind of get it. It's not a big deal. I have 2 teenage daughters also, and they were, they have to live with, kids at school telling them that you're the luckiest girl in the world to have a dad. Like, it's all a bunch of BS. But they live with it, and it's pretty cool to them. Except I used to take them into video stores back when they had videos, and there would be a Rocko video sitting on there, and then they were all into their Little Mermaid stuff, and then let's get this video. Like, no.
With when we had Mr. Warburton on the show a few months ago, he said that whenever he'd go like somewhere, his kids or people would always walk up to him, and when he went somewhere with his kids, maybe to school, people would always walk up and say, hey, I watch your show all the time. Have you ever had any of your daughter's friends or just people in general walk up and say, hey, you're Joe Murray, I love your show? Yeah. Well, because if your daughters are teenagers, I'm guessing they either grow up with Lazlo or Rocko at that age.
Well, they mostly grew up with Lazlo, but Rocko has become like this cult thing, and there's a lot of kids who come to school in Rocko shirts, and they know Rocko, and so they, to them it's pretty cool that so when I go to shows and things that the girls are in, I'll have people coming up to me and stuff, but it's cool. Yeah, Rocko's got some sort of nostalgic thing to it.
Yeah.
That,
especially with all the Nickelodeon pushing a lot of their 90s programming lately, it's been getting a little bit of a resurgence.
Right.
In the comments, this is interesting. Cash Akinsade wants to know if Ralph Bighead was based on Ralph Bakshi, the animator behind Wizards, Lord of the Rings, Fritz the Cat. That's interesting. Is that true? Is that a thing?
No.
Ralph, huh? I wouldn't know, because Ralph Bighead's based on you, right?
It's kind of based on me, but I did the voice, and it's more. It's kind of, it turned out to be a compilation of a lot of the guys in the studio. We were writing those 2 episodes with Ralph in it. Everybody kind of put their thing in. I mean, the first one was about a relationship he has with his father, which, a lot of artists can relate to, that their fathers don't want them going into the artistic field. And I definitely had that, and a lot of other guys did. It's not easy for a father to sign off on that, or any parent, and so that's really what it came about. And the other show, the Wacky Deli show, was very autobiographical in a lot of ways. And people would make fun of things that I would do, write it into the character.
I think we're fumbling around in the studio here. So moving on from Rocko, what would you? So you made Lazlo next for Cartoon Network, sort of at the end of the beginning and sort of to the end of a certain era for Cartoon Network that kind of went to the CN reel sort of after Lazlo and Foster's and all that stuff went away. But how do you feel the change was from going from Nickelodeon to Cartoon Network in completely different animation scenes?
Yeah, well, it was kind of like, who's making the cool stuff now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And at the time, I felt that Cartoon Network was doing some cool stuff, and so I kind of felt like I wanted to go to a new place and try it out, and it was a good experience up until the end, and then they had some personnel changes in the executive offices, and things got a little weird, and so I headed out the exit.
A CN Reel show?
What is a CN Reel show? I'm not sure.
Well, CN Reel was the. I guess I'm the one that's getting to teach this. This is pretty cool. Was the failed attempt, I guess, the programming block run by Andrew WCK for Cartoon Network, that it was giving cartoons and real people a shot. So they were having a lot of live action shows. Destroy Build Destroy, I think, was one. Dude, What Would Happen? Other shows like that. A lot of people like Maxwell Adams or Craig McCracken were kind of fired from their jobs because Cartoon Network wanted to switch their focus from animation to live action. Did you know that?
Well, yeah, I was at that transition point.
Yeah,
I left right for Craig to go. That was the biggest mistake Cartoon Network could ever make, is let Craig McCracken go. That was like crazy. And there are certain people that they let go that you're kind of like, well, all right. But when Craig left, you really knew that.
Well, that was
it was hitting the fan big time.
Craig and Gendy kind of paved the way for what Cartoon Network is now.
Right. Yeah.
And so
Craig made them a lot of money.
Yeah, Powerpuff Girls is still today, even with the reboot. It's milking. It's getting there. So,
yeah.
One of my favorite
show.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Lazlo is the color palette. It's a lot different stylistically from Rocko. Rocko's a lot more like stretchy, not a lot of straight lines. Lazlo's a lot more, I don't know, rectangles, shapes like that. I can't speak English. But the color palette with all these grays and these greens and these oranges, I really like. It really feels like summer to me. How'd you come up with these colors that you use as the palette?
The palette was based on Indian blankets. Like I would go into I got all these books on all these lodges, the lodges that would be in like national parks and things of that sort, and I would look at their type of furniture and and then they always had Indian blankets, Native American blankets, and things of that sort. So I started like looking into those colors, and that's really where it came from. That was like I was just trying to get the whole feel of the lake and that whole life that we all remember.
Yeah, it's like
if you were able to go to camp.
Yeah, so Rocko's was obviously Rocko's was cell animation, and Lazlo was made digitally. What was the switch like, making two shows in completely different styles?
I never missed having to do cell animation.
Oh, yeah.
We used to, on Rocko, I used to call somebody retakes. If you know what a retake is where the overseas studio sends you a scene and you say it doesn't work and it needs to be redone, and that's called a retake. And sometimes I would have like 80% retakes on my show. The thing about a cell, if you're familiar with it, when you shoot a cell over and over and over again, the peg holes get loose, and anyway, it creates all new problems. And also there's shadows and things of that sort. Yeah. But what happened is that so in digital age, I was very happy that we didn't have to do cells anymore, but also you could fix a lot of things digitally really easily, which was really nice. I used to, Lazlo, I would do whole new scenes in the editing bay that didn't exist before, and right before it went on air, you were still able to do changes to it. But the day, I'll never forget the day when Cartoon Network went HD, and I brought a bunch of my crew, including my art director, into the editing room and showed them the HD, and I said, now we're really screwed because
Yeah.
You can see everything.
Yeah.
And you can't. TV was very forgiving as a medium overall for animation. As an independent filmmaker, I had to pay attention to a lot more things, but TV animation is very forgiving. So when you start going into HD, then you really have to pay attention to all the details and make sure that everything is working and everything is, because you can't get away with it. It's pure, and so in that sense, it was, volume animation is challenging in itself, and so not having a forgiving medium is a little tougher, but what's life without challenges, right?
In the comments, Pinata Time would like to know, on the veins of what you said about about wanting all those retakes, is there any specific things you can remember on Rocko's or maybe Lazlo, just in general, for any of your shows, that one little thing you can just remember to this day really bugged you that they just got away with? Yeah, like in terms of like a mistake or something.
Well, I wouldn't let them get away with it. It was a mistake.
That's good, yeah.
No, they couldn't get away with it. No. I mean, there were a lot of things that would bug me that would happen, but you can't really fault the overseas studios and everybody they're working hard. Everybody's working hard, and it's a volume environment, and things just happen. It's there is one story though where we got a shipment of film from Korea, and there were squid floating around in
Really?
the box. I'll never forget that one.
Wow.
So we had to return the film because it smelled like fish. But yeah, no, I mean anything you could imagine. There was a scene on the Fatheads, if you know the Fatheads.
Yeah.
Where I think they're walking their pet fly, and I forget if it's a Wackadelly or I have no son. But anyway, the overseas studio made a mistake, and they were supposed to have them walking, but instead they had them like floating, and there's like a ripple underneath their feet. Oh, yeah. And it was a mistake, but we thought it was so hilarious. We left it in. So it's I mean, some things can work out for the better. It was kind of funny. And
on the veins of that, the little Justin would like to know, because Rocko's sort of notorious for all the adult jokes it had back in the day. Is there any specific adult joke that you are surprised or proud that you got away with on the show? Or either shows, Lazlo, too?
I don't want to jinx myself.
Yeah?
Pointing things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest one was... Yeah.
You got to think about it, don't you?
Well, no, I just don't want to. It was really great that they put a lot of that on the air, and and we had a lot of fun with it. But there was a situation. I'll just say this one. I hope no one's listening. That's been listening. But when we did, if you're familiar with Choky Chicken, the restaurant, so there's a story behind that we actually originally called it Chubby Chicken. Mm-hmm. And there's a department in Nickelodeon that researches every name that you have for anything, and see if there could be a guy down on Main Street in some little tiny town in the middle of Iowa that is running some sort of a little outfit that has the same name, and we can't use it if they do that. So apparently there was a place called Chubby Chicken somewhere in the country, and so we said, well, we can come up with some different names. So we started coming up with, as usual, we started coming up with names that we thought that they would never go for. One of them was Choky Chicken. Yeah. So,
and if you at home don't know what Choky Chicken means, let's keep this family friendly. So look it up in your own time.
Yeah, ask somebody if they know what that means. It's a version of it, but I went into the executive's office that was overseeing this, and I said, they said, well, what are you gonna do about Chubby Chicken? And I said directly to her, I said, well, we want to use Choky Chicken, and I was expecting her to say, right, you're not going to use it, but she goes, oh, okay, that sounds good.
Do you think she knew, or do you think she was just like,
no? I don't think she knew. I don't think she made the connection.
And
so it's iconic now, right?
And one of the ones that didn't get away, I think one of the only episodes that, I don't know if it was banned or just never aired, but Leapfrogs, the notorious Leapfrogs episode. When you heard that you fully animated an episode, fully voice acted everything, and it was pulled away for being too inappropriate or something like that, what was that like?
Well, they didn't do that till after I left.
Oh, really?
No, it ran.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ran for a while.
Did they just?
It was, and it's on the DVD collection.
Yeah.
The full, all the seasons, but no, it ran for a while, and all of our episodes ran for a while. When I left, though, they went back in and they re-edited a bunch of stuff, and pulled out some scenes that were in there, and then they took that one out of rotation. But I'm not sure whether is it still not in rotation. I
don't. I know I've seen it before on top 10 banned cartoons list, but I think it wasn't. I don't think they show it anymore. No, they don't. Although they do show.
I can't even believe it's in the top 10 banned cartoons. What's the big deal about it? It's not like. Well, yeah. All right. Some of these things I look at, because I get. There are people who see things in these Rocko episodes that we never even intended, but their mind goes there. It's like, all right, we did. All right, there were a lot of things we didn't intend, but
all right.
But I think there's a certain type of a mind that can see things that
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it's a pretty innocent show, actually, myself.
And on the subject of
Rocko's very sincere in that show. He knows that he's in a predicament with Mrs. Bighead that
Yeah.
I think
compromising. Let's say
it's a little compromising, and he's just trying to be a good neighbor.
Yeah, let's leave it there. The little Justin would like to know if there's an episode of Rocko or Lazlo or both that you remember fondly or that you're most proud of. For either one.
Well, there's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. It's hard to. Wackadilly is one of my favorites, Rocko, and the Doug Lawrence stuff in there, and Martin Olson and I wrote that one, and it turned out really well. But it also has a lot of stuff about the entertainment industry that we're all kind of going through at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and the whole thing where I filmed that little live action footage of the meatloaf, and I made the meatloaf myself. And there were flies on it and everything. It was really cool.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do. In Lazlo, we did an hour special called "Where's Lazlo?" that Mark O'Hare and I, who's a genius. He was my co-producer at Lazlo, and we were getting towards the end of the seasons that we were going to do, and they asked us if we would like to do an hour special, and Mark and I just said, we'll just do it. And we usually have a whole big, huge team of people that will do the storyboarding for stuff, and we all kind of pitch in. But Mark and I decided we're going to board this whole thing and write it ourselves. And I think even our story editor had left already. I think our writing was over. And so Mark and I just started riffing on stuff, and it's kind of a backstory of Lazlo, like answering a lot of questions about how he came in and stuff. And I thought it turned out really well. And Mark and I had a really good time doing it. And then it won an Emmy. So Mark and I were able to celebrate our weirdness. It was a little strange.
One story.
Lazlo gets eaten by a bear. I don't know if you know the story. But,
yeah, I remember that one. So one story I remember, I read this years ago, that there's an episode of Rocko, I remember one, Heifer says something by the wayside that he was adopted by a pack of wolves, and he has this tattoo of like all the fresh cuts of meat or something like that. And that was just, like a whatever joke, but I think the LA Times took it as such a bold move for someone in a children's cartoon to say that they were an adopted character. Do you know of this response, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, there was a whole big, huge article that came out when that show aired. That the quote was from the LA Times is that it was a high watermark.
Yeah.
Television animation. And that I would, I'm proud of that, but we didn't even look at it that way when we were doing it. The whole thing about modern life to us was, what is modern life? I mean, adoption is part of modern life. Yeah. There's all these, the whole thing with leapfrogs and the whole thing with all these different types of topics were modern life. So we tried to delve into things and not play it safe with stuff, and but it had to be funny. Yeah. So we weren't going to get too serious with things, but I based Heifer on a friend of mine that I had growing up, and he actually was adopted. So, but that wasn't where the idea came from. It was we ended up just talking about stories with Heifer, that what his family would be like, and we thought, well, what if he's adopted? And then, of course, you start thinking, what are conflicts of your adoptive family? What if they wanted to all eat you?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that we were able to do, because it's it's anthropomorphic and animals are playing the parts, but we were able to take that and put it over to human nature. And so, and there's a cross-dressing kid in there, one of the kids, and it's just a highly dysfunctional family. But it's a very loving story, actually. If you look at it, there's some harsh points where his real mother was actually a car seat. It turned into a car seat, and so there's some parts of it. But yeah, LA Times thought it was very bold, and there's I mean, Nickelodeon was able to take a lot of chances back then, and with things. I don't know how much of this stuff would get through these days. Yeah. But back then, it was pretty. Nickelodeon was a fairly new cable station, and cable was fairly new, and so we didn't have to run by the same things that that were all over kids' entertainment now. And so in that sense, we were able to do some, but it's funny. It's kind of funny that, that it was some sort of a risk to do it.
And sort of off the back what you said, and don't get too trash talk about this because I don't know who the next guest on my show might be. How do you feel about the current Nickelodeon lineup or some of the cartoons that came after yours?
Yeah.
Just yeah.
Well, I don't own a TV, so I have no idea what's on right now.
I think so.
Or what well, it's not a big secret, but I'm not a huge cartoon watcher.
Yeah.
There are some friends of mine that have done some shows that I really like, and I've seen a few episodes of those, but I didn't really pay attention to Nickelodeon's lineup of shows.
Yeah.
They sent me a copy of their Nicktoons book. I don't know if you've seen it with it's got all their Nicktoons shows in it. It's got Gak in it and stuff. But I was going through it, and so I don't even know of these shows. So.
There's because it didn't go the Cartoon Network route of all live action, but there were a few towards the end. But there's been a few good, a few bad Nicktoons. I ain't gonna say anything about anything because I don't know who might be the next guest on my show. So let's keep it safe and see what's going on in the comments. Someone whose username I can't read is asking, how would you describe the species of the characters in your show? Specifically Camp Lazlo, because there's a few in there that I don't know too well.
Species? Why you mean like you can't tell what species they are?
Wait, no, I read that wrong. How do you decide the species of your characters? Never mind. That was not an animal. That was not an Animal Kingdom question. That was a interpretive question. I need higher prescription sunglasses.
The species is actually, I try and match the personality of what I'm trying to do with the character to the species, and I do that. I did that with Rocko, and I did that on Lazlo. So, although Clam is an albino pygmy rhino, so which I'm not sure exists, but. It matches him. I don't know. See, I can make up a species. That's a whole new species. Maybe someday they'll.
Joeus Murius. That's the Latin name right there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the like in Rocko, if I wanted a sleazy shoe salesman, I did crocodiles, or alligators, and. You can tie things in with, you can make a joke out of it too. It's like, what kind of a species would lend themselves to this kind of character?
Yeah, I think there's
Luna Around the World, which is also anthropomorphic. When we go to a different part of the world, I actually try and I do research on the indigenous animals that are in that part of the world and try and make up characters that are local.
Found any weird animals in those parts that surprised you?
Yeah, there's lots of weird animals out there.
I don't doubt you there. So I think somewhere in this great book, which you can find a link to in the description below if you want to buy one, all those watchers out there, you say that Rocko's a wallaby because you were at the zoo once and there were all these like giant creatures around this tiny little wallaby and you thought that looked funny. Is there anywhere that Lazlo being a spider monkey came from?
I don't know. I don't have a good story for Lazlo for his being a monkey. I'm not sure where that came from. I think it just, I think with that situation, it's the same as where I tried to find personality for what I wanted for him. I wanted him to be from Brazil, I remember. So I think I did some research on animals around there, and the monkey came up. I thought the monkeys were pretty cool. Although everybody says it looks absolutely nothing like a monkey.
He's got the tail. I'll give him the tail. So in the case of coming up with that, what comes first, the animal or the personality? Do you like find a personality and try to match it with an animal, or do you see, a crocodile looks sleazy and I'll go with that?
The personality usually comes first.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm writing, that's what comes up. When the type of character, the characters, how he would talk and how he or she would be, and then you match. Then I would match the design style of the character. If it's if it's a fat character, skinny character, large or small, it's all a matter of like Filbert is kind of a neurotic character, so I gave him a hunch which matched a turtle, and plus the turtle thing also works well because he's got his shell and he's very phobic, and so he's always able to retreat into his shell, so that all comes about. But that was the type of character that I was writing, and so he became a turtle.
Yeah. So DDHH in the comments would like to know, with both shows, I know we already kind of talked about it with Lazlo, but what inspired the overall art style of both shows? Rocko's a lot more, bendy and stretchy, and Lazlo's a lot more, and I actually know the word this time, the polygonal and shapy and all that fun stuff. All those words, yeah.
The term for Rocko is wonky.
Wonky, yeah.
Wonky. Yeah.
Rocko's a wonky show. All right. Yeah.
That became like the term of, I don't know who started calling it that, but no, that was actually a derivative of my illustration style. I was an illustrator during the 80s, and then I started getting into animation and doing animated films, and everything just kind of started bending and warping, and that's just the way that I drew. So when I started doing animation and when I designed Rocko, it was kind of just a same kind of a thing. So and then I was influenced by Rocko. I wanted it to be a combination of Canadian Film Board type animation, which was really great at the time. Richard Conde and Cordell Barker and Marv Newland, and they were really doing some great stuff. And so I wanted some of that, and I wanted to cross it over with Looney Tunes and kind of go from there. But the design style itself is more just my design style. So then after Rocko, I started doing children's books, and then I started experimenting with paint, with different types of painting styles. And so Lazlo was kind of like that. The backgrounds were all my children's book style that I developed while I was doing that. Yeah. And
Yeah. And someone in the comments would like to know, when did you start drawing? And a lot of that's in here, but for the sake of those who haven't read this incredible book, which you can find a link to in the description below if you want to buy it, people would like to know, when did you start drawing, and I guess how that transitioned into chores and My Dog Zero, and shorts, which are shorts that he made, by the way, if you don't know that. But how that drawing style developed into animation.
Well, when did I start drawing? I'm saying from I started drawing from the time I was I was like 4 years old, and then when I got to kindergarten, the kindergarten teacher was always noticing my drawing abilities, and there's actually a story behind that. I don't know if I think the guy, I think it's in one of the YouTube videos, because the guy who was introducing me for the live event used it, but I would draw, most of the other kids in kindergarten were doing these stick figures and stuff, and then I would draw women with big boobs and like lots of details. And my kindergarten teacher was a little taken back like this, and my mother went for a conference with the teacher, and the teacher looked at her and she goes, "I'm sorry, I thought you were going to be a little bit more well endowed for the way that your son draws." So
that's an interesting conference.
Yeah. So I don't remember this too much, but my mom used to always tell me that story. But so then, like all through school, it was something that I always did, and you could meet girls that way. I like that, and then I would enter talent contests. I won a talent contest drawing Snoopy. I remember in second grade, and so it just kind of developed like that. And I did my own newspaper and put my cartoons in it. And I started really getting into cartoons, and I loved watching Saturday morning cartoons, and I loved comic strips, and so that's really where I wanted to go.
Yeah, and again to the comments. Rob has a head would like to know if you have kept any concept art or cells or just the things in general from either of your shows.
Yeah.
Yes. I would assume any specific cells you kept for a certain reason.
Yeah. Well. No, I've got a ton of stuff. I used to have a lot more, and every time that I moved, sometimes things would get rid of. I used to have all these storyboards from all the episodes, but I got rid of those. But I have a lot of cells. Yeah. I have a lot of cells. I've got some of those title cards that you see at the beginning of the episodes. Those are beautiful.
And did you happen to keep Travis, which is for those who don't know, the comic that inspired Rocko? Just in general, do you still have the original?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you keep that? Is that in a little special frame, or is that just sort of lying around?
That's in one of my boxes full of original art. I probably take me a while to dig it out, but I still have it. I don't throw stuff away.
Yeah.
Well,
is there
I'm a bit of a hoarder, I guess.
Well, if it's stuff like this, that'll be worth $1 million one day, maybe.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's more sentimental to me. Yeah.
And yeah.
I had all these. I had a house in Glendale that had a basement, which not too many California houses have basements, but I had all my cells from all of my independent films down there, and it flooded.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I lost all my cells, which was sad. But part of it is.
Sorry to hear that. I guess I don't know if it's any closure now. We're getting something. Something long in the comments. This is gonna be a long. Oh, here it is. Joe Delman would like to know how you came up with the concept for Camp Lazlo, and if you were a scout or a camper or any sort of thing like that.
I was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was a scout and a camper. I was a horrible scout.
Oh yeah. What is
no,
that?
I didn't hate scouts. I just didn't like doing the badges stuff. I was like really bad at it, and also I didn't like authority figures. So I was kind of a rebellious scout.
Rebellious voice.
Yeah. But we would go camping, and but my dad and I used to go camping a lot, and we used to go to Lake Tahoe, in Northern California, a lot, and we spent a lot of summers there, and that's where the Leaky Lake is actually based on.
Yeah.
Lake Tahoe, and there's a little island in it which I based on Itchy Island. So there were some camps that I went to that had the little cabins that were like that, and
little uniforms or something? Oh, I don't think they had uniforms.
No, well, there was different. It's kind of a melding of a bunch of different camps. Some of them weren't scout camps, so I got a lot of people at camp experiences. So you end up getting everybody. There's one episode we did with this llama that comes into camp because our story editor used to go to a camp that had llamas. I don't know what the deal was with the llama, but they would spit on everybody.
Yeah.
We thought that would be really good. And there was one guy whose camp experience, he got this fish, like a leech kind of fish stuck to him. And so we turned that into an episode where Lazlo gets a leech stuck to his head.
Yeah. And so you say you don't watch a lot of animation, you don't have a TV. What kind of art are you interested in now?
Oh, there's a lot of art I'm interested in. I'm huge. I'm into independent animation. I like independent film. I like
what kind of independent stuff? Any notable ones you remember?
There's God, now you got me. Because I have them all. Like I've got a whole collection of all these. Whenever I come across a really good film, Elliot Cowan is a really great animator who does these box head films, and they're then there's ones that come out of Canada all the time. They're just brilliant and they're beautiful, and it's just something that I really miss about independent film, where that they're not made in a volume environment, so there's really a lot to them that you can't do in what you're doing in television. Unfortunately, there's no money at all in independent film.
Yeah.
So you can be doing, the shorts that they do for in front of Pixar movies, they're kind of like independent film, but those are cool. But other than that, I'm a really big painting fanatic. I'm into the Impressionists and some of there's some European painters, Francis Bacon, and some of these others, and then various types of illustrators. I really love really cool illustration.
And so we're starting to wrap up here. So the last question I usually ask most of the guests, even though you answered in this book here, I just like to ask again: if someone was sitting out there and they're watching this and they're saying, "Wow, this is the greatest interview I've ever seen," but I want to really get into the animation industry, what skills would you give to or what tips would you give to someone who's really wanting to get into the industry?
Well, you have to be heavily sedated.
Yeah.
Tips on the animation industry, I wouldn't.
Like getting into it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of colleges, where you can get some good animation background. It depends on what part of the industry you want to get into. If you want to get into feature or television, those are two different places.
Yeah.
And the best thing is to learn how to draw as well as possible. And I always tell everybody to make a film or two if you can. If you really want to get into animation, it's like the greatest calling card that you could ever have. Shows what you can do. Mm-hmm. And I when people come in for an interview with me for a spot on one of my crews, if they've got an independent film, they just notch themselves up way up.
Yeah.
So
I can't say I have any of those.
Yeah, I mean it takes a lot of perseverance and it shows their dedication and all, but it's also like if you do your own film, you've worn a lot of hats already, and you're really an asset to an animation team, So I do look for that, and yeah.
Usually that's the last question I ask people. But this question that just came up, I can't pass this up. I don't know why someone would ask it, but they'd like to know what kind of car you drive. Just yeah.
I drive a Prius.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. That's pretty. You know, that's pretty hardcore. Yeah,
I have a family.
That's pretty metal. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us again. Do you have anything to say before we leave, Joe? Got any things?
Just thanks to everybody who watches the shows, and you know, it's been a great support.
Yeah, and thanks for watching my show too. And if you did, and if you liked it, and if you don't even know why this show exists at all, it's all to help raise money for my friend. Please check the link in the description below for the donation box. Go donate money. It'd be really nice if you did. Also in the description is a link to this great book right here written by Joe himself. Joe Murray is the creator of Rocko's Modern Life, the Camp Lazlo, Luna Around the World for coming up soon for PBS, and the author of this book. We're very happy to have him today, and stay tuned for what's coming up next on Cartoons vs. Cancer. On July 18th, we're going to have Chris Savino, who did Lad House, and with the summer series keep going and going, we have people like Everett Peck, people like Gary Trousdale, and even Ralph Bakshi might be coming on our show pretty soon. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen. So we will see you guys later, and thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye. Bye.